AICTE, of course, it was module 6, proficiency module. And from 10:45 to 11:45, SIP module 1 on human values, universal human values, wherein we were discussing feelings in relationship. That means feelings between one human and the other human. That means feelings between two human beings. Then after the break, that is from 1 to 2, we are going to have SIP module 7 based on literary activities, and the resource person for today is Shashikiran BNG, and as we just heard a little while ago, that means before the break, Shashikiran BNG is going to talk about basically literature for engineers. Of course, earlier we've had enriching talks with some of our resource persons. To begin with, we had a very enriching session with one of our resource person for literature, and that is Sudarshanji on the very first day. And then our Gopuji enriched us with the history of science and literature. And apart from that, yesterday we had another resource person, Devdharji, who talked a lot about the Valmiki Ramayana and the real meaning of each of the verses, each of the shlokas in Valmiki Ramayana, what really it meant. And it was so enriching to know that the Vanara, who we have been thinking of being the monkeys, were actually the human residents of Vana, that is the forest, who were very intelligent and physically very strong, and they helped Rama in all possible ways to, of course, fetch Sita ji back from Sri Lanka and the other activities. Of course, we also got to know that why is the character of Rama so important for human existence? And that is basically because of the ideals as a human which Rama set for the mankind. The right way of living, with right understanding, right feelings in our relationship, and the right understanding of the physical facilities required for each and every human to be in harmony with oneself, to be in harmony in the family, to be in harmony in the society, and to have harmony in the total existence. Of course, the beautiful painting you can see across. Oh, wow, lovely. So our students, this is Ashley George, who's submitted this particular expression. So under creative practices, Niyati Pandey has depicted nature in such a beautiful way. So the theme is family, trust, and unity. I mean, when I see the young students, this is another beautiful thing. When I see, this is Tina, who's submitted her creative practices with the theme nature, so beautifully depicted. Now, when we see our students, this is Anusha Jain, I think. Yes, Anusha Jain. So, in this way, we find that Sukriti has depicted a beautiful set of, you know, painted by her. This gives us another sense of how the children are so creative, so sensitive towards nature, towards human beings, towards right understanding. This is something which we have been looking for, and 20th is the day when we are going to celebrate, when we are going to celebrate with all these creative practices and with all the resource persons and the students alike are going to celebrate the whole event of SIP on 20th. That's so good. Our resource person, Shashi Kiran BNG, is already with us. I welcome you, sir, to, of course, enrich our students with your content, with your knowledge, and the children and the students are looking forward for your session. And we are also going to have another enriching session with Shashi Kiranji. We'll just begin in a while. We are just waiting for the students to join in, for the participants to join in after, of course, a break for 1 hour, which was quite like a lunch break for the participants. And we're just waiting for our participants to join in with us so that each one of them, uh, some of some of our participants are already with us. May I just request if any of the participants would like to share something, so they can just raise their yes, very well, very well. Dr. Okay, Srihari. Yes, Srihari, beta, you have the mic. Would you like to
Ma'am,
share
yes,
something?
ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, to share upon, it's a great opportunity, ma'am, that you have provided. This is indeed a curious course which I was trying to pursue, and you have given me a great opportunity. And those teachings that this course or this hour gives me is much valuable that I can't actually value that yeah, such valuable course you gives us, and actually as well as these courses must be I like to pursue these courses throughout my career or throughout my studies. And to reflect upon it, I'm not that a person to comment on these courses, but I express my sincere gratitude for providing us the opportunity to discover those which have been called as ancestral intellects. Thank you.
Uh, very well said, beta. This is something which AICT has taken an initiative for. And it's so wonderful to see the children all across the country at a single platform getting enriched with so much of content, and of course being able to communicate with so many of the intellectuals who have, of course, so many of our senior members who have uh, a lot of learning. They have, through their experience in their life, they have shaped and nurtured and molded so much of content for the younger generation to know about and to be enriched with. This is so good. Very nice, Sri Hari. And I can see that you are participating, and of course I want more and more children to come up and speak up, because such kind of platforms give children ample of opportunities to talk to people, to talk to resource persons, to talk to senior members of of course our society, of our academic uh, you know uh, profiles. So this is something which is an opportunity and a platform where each one of the participants can enrich themselves and communicate with all the resource persons who are here. That's so nice, Peter. Wonderful. I think it's 2 o'clock. So I think I'll like to start with the session with, of course, a very warm welcome to all the participants who are with us. And of course, a another a sense of gratitude and a very warm welcome to our resource person for today's session, and that is Shashi Kiranji, who's with us. As we know that Shashi Kiranji is a Bachelor of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering, and thereafter uh, uh, Shashi Kiranji pursued masters in Sanskrit aesthetics. So, like since most of our young participants, that's the students, are from the engineering background and they are going to be engineers, the budding engineers, it gives them a good thought that yes, you can, and the new education, the national education policy, which is in the pipeline for the country, gives another, broad spectrum platform wherein we can pursue so many of the courses, so many of the, subjects which are different from either the science or the engineering background, which earlier was not all that easy to, pursue because if we were from the science background, it was difficult for us to pick a course in humanities. Of course, some of the institutes, some of the uh, higher learning organizations in India had started this kind of a culture, but yet now the whole country is going to be benefited. So now, as we can see, that Shashi Kiranji, after doing his engineering in mechanical engineering, pursued Sanskrit for higher studies, uh, has co-composed a Sanskrit poem and co-edited the English work of D.V. Gundappaji, co-translated Dr. Ganesh Kannada's work, and of course into English, co-translated Devadu Narasimha ji's work and into Sanskrit, of course, with the same title. So I think without any delay, I'll welcome our resource person for the day, Shashi Kiranji. Sir, of course, now it's over to you, Shashi Kiranji, so that we can have an enriching session for the students.
Namaste. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to be here addressing all of you uh, at the All India Council for Technical Education. And I'm very happy that the Council has thought it appropriate to address itself to sensitizing its students, especially students from the technical background, into the various aspects of literature. I think it is of extreme significance, and that an all India body like the All India Council for Technical Education has started such an initiative is very, very uh, significant, and I think it is a step in the right direction. I am very happy to be here because I happen to be trained as a mechanical engineer, and presently I pursue literature for full time in during all my days. And the preparation for this talk has given me a great opportunity to reflect on my past using the light that is provided to me in the present. So I must thank all the authorities involved, all the coordinators, and also Dr. Rajat Vasudeva Murthy for giving me this opportunity. So with these introductory words, let me share my screen with all of you. The title for this talk is Literature for Engineers. And I think it is important for all scientific students to use precise words and to be very, very careful with the words they are using. And therefore, I shall take a few minutes at the outset to clarify the sense in which I use these words. Literature for Engineers was a title provided by me, not because it is absolutely representative of whatever I have in mind to communicate through this talk, but because it is concise. Oftentimes, it so happens that the titles for the talks themselves are so long that students or the listeners feel off put. And in order to avoid that problem, I phrased it as literature for engineers. And by literature, I mean any form of art or any medium that uses words to express itself. It can be fiction or it can be non-fiction, which are the primary heads under which literature is generally classified. But the primary focus of this talk, whenever I say literature, is a form of art that concerns itself with enduring human emotions and emotions that have been with human beings ever since the ever since Homo sapiens, placed their foot on this earth. And whenever they try to express themselves, that is giving a verbal form to whatever they felt within. It might be communicating an idea or communicating whatever they felt. It might be happy, it might be sad, and whatsoever. And fiction, of course, has grown so much these days that it involves multiple genres such as investigative fiction, detective fiction, fantasy, and things like that. And non-fiction also includes so many wide-ranging categories. But for the purpose of our talk, it is enough for us to understand that literature can be both fiction and non-fiction, and it can be classical literature, non-classical literature. But my idea is to focus on classical literature more. And the next significant word in the title is engineering. And I think it is absolutely limiting and stifling to think of engineering as divorced from science. Because whenever we think of engineering, what comes to our mind? Technology comes to our mind. And technology is something that derives inspiration from the findings of science and then progresses to make human life better, to ease the problems of human life, and to use all our resources in a more optimal manner. That is why technology has been fabricated, and that is why it is widely employed. And it is absolutely essential to think of technology, to think of the various streams of engineering, to think of all the marvels that engineering has provided us with as not divorced from science, as having a firm footing in science. I think that is of primal significance. So, having clarified the sense in which I am going to use these terms, I will start my talk by referring to a term that I think most of you here will be familiar with, at least the students who form a great chunk of the listeners of this talk will have heard of this term. It is an acronym. It is called FOMO, and the large form, the words involved in it are fear of missing out. I am sure all of you have heard of this term. And why is this important? This acronym features itself in almost all platforms of the social media. If you happen to open any of the apps of social media on your phone, chances are that you might come across this term, fear of missing out. Fear of missing out on what? On all activities that are happening around you. In the modern society, we see that we are bombarded from bits or shards of information from all directions. So much so that the modern world itself, the world in which we live, is often characterized as an age of information explosion. So, what usually happens is that whenever you're talking to a group of friends, each person will be interested in a host of subjects, and in the course of conversation many things spring up. And if those things are thought of in a manner that one can learn so many things by talking to people, then that generates a sense of healthy attitude towards life. But in a manner quite different from that, what is happening in the modern days is that people are finding it obsessively insecure to find themselves in a situation where they are totally unaware of whatever is happening. For example, if you happen to open a news app on your phone, uh, there will be news about the US presidential elections, about the ongoing Bihar elections, and the bad pandemic that we are facing, and so many things like that. And these are things that everybody is familiar with. And there will be so many other things with respect to science, with respect to arts, with respect to journalism, and a host of other subjects. So, what is this happening, and why is this important for today's talk? I think it is important because technology by itself fosters this kind of attitude of being outdated very soon, because technology by its very definition is forever in a competition with itself. As all of you know, today's technology is tomorrow's history. Otherwise, that is no good technology. In fact, one of the hallmarks of technology, like people say, is to what extent that it can outgrow itself in a very swift manner. uh, to quote an anecdote, I happened to go to a shop in order to buy a pen, to a stationery shop. And there was another customer to the shop who came and who asked for a fountain pen manufactured by the company called Lamy. And I heard the conversation that panned out between the shopkeeper and the consumer. The shopkeeper told the person who had come to purchase the pen that this pen is available only upon order. So if you place an order for a Lamy fountain pen, then we will procure it for you. We do not stock those products in our shop. Then the customer placed the order and went back. After he left, I happened to have a conversation with the shopkeeper and I asked him, why do you not stock Lamy pens, and why are they procured only on order? The answer he gave me, I think, is very, very significant, and it throws a great amount of light on the purpose and on the nature of technology itself. He told me that Lamy is a very niche company that manufactures pens, especially fountain pens, and this company manufactures newer and newer kinds of pens ever so often, that people want the most advanced kind of pen. So if you happen to get a stock of some pens, say manufactured in 2019, then they will be absolutely useless in 2020 because there will be a new version available. So just think of it this way. If this is the case with as basic an equipment of human requirement like a fountain pen, what to say of companies like Apple? What to say of companies such as Tesla, who have a worldwide basis and who happen to influence all our lives either directly or indirectly in such a huge and in such a mind boggling manner? So that is why technology is not trying to outsmart, not trying to outrun anybody or anything else, but it is, like I said, forever in a competition with itself. And this sense of competition engenders, in a way, the fear of missing out or FOMO. And this is where literature becomes absolutely essential. Like I said, literature or classical literature is very, very enduring. And unlike technology, which is fleeting by its very nature, literature provides a very solid foundation to which one can anchor himself, especially in these times of rapid change, in these fleeting times, in these times where everything, every product, even human relationships are quite evanescent. It is utmost important for human beings to be healthy and to be competitive, and in order to function in an optimal manner, they have to have some things that are permanent, and literature is one such permanent thing. Why? Because literature concerns itself with things that are permanent within human beings, the internal landscape of human beings, that is the emotional universe, because that is long lasting, because that does not change with the fleeting moments, with the with the caprices of the time. Literature is quite enduring. and that is why it is very important to study literature. That is why it is important, especially for engineers and people from a technical background, to study literature. If not pursue it in a full time, I would urge all of you to study some books or read some books, and especially if you happen to develop a taste for classical literature, which has passed the test of time, then you will, uh, mark for yourself a lifetime of joy and nourishment. And if you take any work, not from just our state, not from just our country, but anywhere in the world, composed anywhere in the world, you would see that if that work falls under what we call the classical literature, under that genre, you will see that irrespective of the time when it is composed, irrespective of who wrote it and who wrote it where, irrespective of the spatial temporal constraints, they will have certain significance for us even today. The Ramayana and Mahabharata, which are the epic poems of a country, our national treasures, so to say, are great examples in this direction. And also the epics of the West, such as Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, the far-famed epics from Greek, and say the tragedies and comedies and the various sonnets composed by Shakespeare, and a host of other works, to even great novels composed in all the regional languages of India and in all other countries. So these are the kind of literature that I am talking about. And in order to impress upon all of you the primacy of the act of reading, the act of interacting with literature, I would like to quote from a very great critic, an English critic who happened to live in the United States and who passed away very recently. His name is Professor Harold Bloom, and if I'm not mistaken, he taught at the University of Yale in the USA. He was very widely recognized as um, uh, as a critic of Shakespeare, and he has written great books on the literature of Shakespeare. So, in his book, How to Read and Why, he gives us a very, very succinct and very important reason as to the question why to read. We must ask ourselves this question: why should one read at all? And Professor Harold Bloom says, and I quote, "We read deeply for varied reasons, most of them familiar, that we cannot know enough people profoundly enough, that um, we need to know ourselves better, that we require knowledge not just of self and others, but of the way things are." This is what Professor Harold Bloom says. And one statement that he has made in this quote, I think, is extremely important. It is this statement that we cannot know enough people profoundly enough. Like I said, excuse me, like I said, human beings are emotional beings. There are various descriptions of human beings as a rational animal, as another kinds of animal, and so on and so forth. But most primarily, human being is an emotional animal, if I am allowed to use that phrase. So, what happens is that emotions by nature are ever so abstract, and their spectrum is so wide that we find it hard pressed to explore all those emotions ourselves. And even the people we interact with, by nature, the number of people we interact with is limited. Although the world has been made small thanks to the progress of science and technology, even so, the number of people that we know on a very personal basis, know from very close quarters, is very, very small when compared to the number of people we know, at a very personal level. So this leaves us with a very nasty predicament, and that is this: it is absolutely essential to understand human emotions in all its hues and shades. And even the closest of our friends will not open themselves to us in a complete manner. How many of us can say without any iota of doubt that I know this person in and out? I know all his thoughts, I know all the corners of his emotional universe. That is quite difficult to achieve. even with people, uh, even with our family, friends, family and friends. What to speak of people who live in conditions absolutely far removed from those of ours? For example, what to speak of people who live in Kenya, who happen to live in Uganda or somewhere in South America? Those conditions of culture itself makes their responses of emotion quite different, and that is why it is important to read literature, because literature grants us that access to people's thoughts and emotions as they have panned out, not just from tens of years, not hundreds of years, not but in terms of thousands of years. And this we can do by reading classical literature, and also by reading books that are well written in a variety of genres that I mentioned at the beginning of this talk. And what happens when you are reading, say, when you are reading a piece of fiction, when that piece of fiction happens to be written very, very well, you identify yourself with so many characters. For example, you can identify, if there is a group of people, one identifies himself with a situation of life experienced by, say, Rama in Ramayana. Another might say, I am very similar to Hamlet, the protagonist of the far famed tragedy authored by Shakespeare. And somebody might say, I feel that I'm very much like Hermione Granger from Harry Potter. So, what does these things tell you? It tells you that the the things that are portrayed in these works of art are very much in consonance, are very much conversant with our inner world. Though those people portrayed in those novels or in those works of art might not wear the same kind of clothes that we do, might not even speak the same language, but if we happen to read about them in a language that we understand, we have what is called in Sanskrit as Hridaya Samvada. There is a conversation between our thoughts, between our emotions and theirs. And that is by virtue of that, we get to know so many more people, and from such intimate quarters as is not possible if we endeavor to do it in real life by meeting all kinds of people. And literature also provides various types of characters. For example, there is an exemplary villain, there is an exemplary person who sacrifices all his life for the sake of others. So there are these type characters, and these type characters help us understand what is, the depth and the width of the type that he represents. And that is why I think it is absolutely essential to read and to read literature. Um, so going forward, science and technology, especially technology that is driven by the findings of science, has become a group activity, especially in modern times. For example, a person, if he has an idea, say he observes nature and he comes up with an idea that, hey, this can be materialized in this way, what usually happens is that the person cannot be a part of the process in which the idea transforms itself into a product or into a manner that is envisioned by that person. So what I'm trying to say is that there are so many processes involved in the manufacture of a certain object, or even in for writing a code in order to make an app, or in order to make a tool which is working at the back end of a website. Everywhere, one person cannot be involved in all those activities, because technology by itself has become highly specialized, has become highly customized, and this does not this is not restricted to technology, any branch, one branch of technology, but all its manifestations. And also in science, it is quite ubiquitous, I must say. And as a contrast to this, the production and enjoyment of literature is passionately personal. For example, if a poet comes up with an idea, then his medium is just words and their meanings, and therefore he can sit down and pen his thoughts, pen down his emotions in a manner that he feels fit, even though he might not have people listening to him. the process of reading and the enjoyment that he derives from it is very, very nourishing, and it is so much enriching that he feels contented at the end of it. And I think in order to experience this kind of individual satisfaction that is so much essential for human beings to function in a very healthy manner, I think it is important to read literature. And like I said, to to enjoy literature in the classical sense. Let me again give you a modern example to drive home the point why to drive home the point that people like to experience this individual satisfaction. If you happen to watch some of the shows on Netflix, or if you happen to read a very popular novel, for example, which is on the bestseller list, say on the some Times Literary Review or New York Literary Review, or even a highly read Kannada novel such as one written by Dr. S.L. Bhairappa or any such thing, what usually happens when you're talking to a group of people, those people are very, very enthused by the fact that they have read the same work. And if a person divulges a piece of information about the work or about the TV show that the other person who is a part of the conversation is not party to, then what usually happens? Hey, spoiler alert. That is the catchphrase of most of us today, right? Especially in the context of TV shows such as Game of Thrones, or what used to be popular in the recent past, such as Big Bang Theory, or any of those shows. What usually happens is that people say that you should give us a spoiler alert. And what does this tell you? This tells you that people want to experience that piece of literature or that TV show by themselves, and they do not want to be spoon fed by somebody else. Whereas in technology, whereas in science, the same idea can be communicated to a group of people in the same manner, and nobody says that I will do this myself. In fact, people will be grateful if you can explain to them what another person has not understood. So this is very, very important, and this kind of individual satisfaction is called enjoyment. Enjoyment is a very dilute word. The Indian tradition has a more powerful word to experience, to explain this or to express this. The Indian tradition calls this ananda, or unalloyed enjoyment. It is also termed sadhyah para nirvruti. You need not break your heads into finding the exact connotation of these terms. It is just to convey the simple fact that literature or any form of art for that matter is a very personal experience. And again, technology, one of the characteristics of technology as it is practiced in modern times is that it is obsessed with outcomes. It is essentially product driven. If you, happen to work on a project, most of you are students, as I understand. And if you are asked to work on a project for your final year degree, or even previously as a part of an assignment, what usually happens is that your advisor, he or she, will constantly ask you to what extent have you progressed, and then there will be then there will be your teammates, among whom there will certainly be two or three people who are languishing. So the load will fall on one person in order to do the presentation, to work on the report, and some such things. Take it one step forward. Suppose you have landed a job and you are sitting and you are given a task to work on a product. And what usually happens is, at the one end there will be your higher authorities, or there might be even the people who have funded the project, who are constantly throwing their darts of questions at you, asking you all sorts of questions. To what extent have you worked on it, and when can we expect the results? And at the other end of the spectrum, there is the set of people who have bought your product at a previous occasion, and they will say, we want these features, when will you release the next update, and what have you made of the questions that we asked you the last time? So what does all these things tell you? It tells you that technology is product driven, And literature, unlike technology in this respect, is not just concerned with the product like a poem or a novel or a book or any such thing. It is also much more concerned with the process, or not just of production of art, but also the process of enjoying art itself. For example, nobody says that while in the process of watching a movie that I enjoyed this bit at 37th minute. Of course, there might be a very catchy situation that happened to come across, that happened to be shown at the 37th minute, but the process of enjoyment of the whole movie, the entire movie, is an organic experience. And literature provides for us the unity of process and product. And this is also the cherished Indian ideal that the process and product are no two different things at all. So uh, the technologists or people who work on science and technology are concerned more about the product, and they fail to understand, or they fail to appreciate the salience of the process itself. And literature opens up this great universe of the process itself to you. And that is why I think this is one more reason to study or enjoy reading books or reading literature. And also, literature provides for you the inseparability of instruction and enjoyment. It tells you how you can get a host of facts, get a legion of facts, whatever you are looking for, and still enjoy. I do not mean to say that this does not happen with technology, but in literature, this happens in a more fundamental. This happens at a more fundamental level. The very nature of literature, especially classical literature, is the inseparability of form and content, and the inseparability of instruction and enjoyment. And that is why I think it is again, uh, this is a point in favor of reading literature. And to come to a point that I mentioned previously, technology thrives on specialization. To develop on the example that I shared at the beginning of this talk, the thing about the Lamy fountain pen. Take, for example, a product, a mobile phone developed by Apple. What usually happens is, right from the time of its inception, you might all be familiar that Apple have produced a good number of phones, a good number of mobile phones of the same design. Apple has this branding of the Apple logo itself and so many other features that are significantly different from Android. And it thrives on specialization. For example, if you look at the new features introduced in the new Apple iPhone, they will not be anything which are significantly at variance from the previous version. They would have provided, probably a couple of more megapixels on the camera and introduced a feature on one of their apps or some such thing. The point I'm trying to make is that literature is unlike technology in that it bases itself on universalization. Universalization, again, in the sense of concerning itself with those facets of emotion, with those, uh, you know, um, thoughts and feelings of human beings as they have been from the beginning of time. And that is why literature is very important. You can take any work, for example, written by Plato somewhere, in ancient Greece. People still read those dialogues even today. They form a very great chunk of, philosophical literature. Or if that, proves to be too serious for you, and if you happen to be inclined to the more humorous side of literature, take the novels, take the stories, or take the long stories written or composed by the great English novelist P.G. Wodehouse. Even today, the characters that he has come up with, like Jeeves and Wooster, and all his novels, are immensely popular today. And we sitting here, I happen to be in Bengaluru, and I can still enjoy the compositions of Plato, of Woodhouse, and all other authors such as Dostoevsky, or if I happen to read a piece of non-fiction such as say a scientific essay written by a person like G.H. Hardy, or even say a piece of economics written by Adam Smith, that is readily available to us. That is because the concepts themselves, as enunciated by all these great people, have a long lasting significance. That is why you should, whenever you read literature, you can start with the fads of the time. You can start with works that happen to be popular at the moment you happen to take up that book. For example, a friend might recommend a book to you, which he or she happen to like. You can read those books, but in the long run, it is very, very beneficial to develop a taste to read classical literature. And to come to very specific benefits that engineers or technically trained people can gain by reading literature or gain by developing a habit of reading is you will develop a power of expression, which is so much important, not just in the English language. You will, find yourself in a manner that your thoughts are coming out from your mouth in in streams, and you are not finding it hard pressed to express any of your ideas. You are not fumbling with words or any such thing. How does that come? It comes by reading literature. It is by reading widely, and it is by reading indiscriminately. And what are some of the concrete benefits that uh, people from the scientific background or people from the background of technology can derive by reading books or can derive by uh, reading literature or in all its genres is that you are expected to write papers, you are expected to work on assignments, you are expected to make presentations such as the ones you are seeing in the ongoing workshop, and you are expected to work on your profiles or CVs, and if you want to apply to any of the universities abroad or even the higher institutions of learning in our own country, you will be asked to produce a statement of purpose as to why you want to study the same subject in a specific institute and why you are inevitable, why you are thought to be an asset to that institution. And it is also very important in teaching in all these areas, such as working on papers and presentations and working on your SOPs and even teaching. The power of expression is inviolable. It is absolutely important. And I must say here that some of my friends have told me that what marks a person apart in his SOP is the way in which he expresses himself, or in a way in which she expresses herself. Suppose you happen to be a professor in one of the famous universities abroad or even in our country. For example, say the Indian Institute of Science or one of the Indian Institutes of Technology, and you are sitting at your desk and you're pouring over a host of applications that contains many and many statements of purposes, and you are looking for a person, you are looking for an application that tells you about the enthusiasm, about the depth of understanding of the person that the application represents. And that is why it is so much important to make your SOPs tailor-made, as the phrase is used, as the phrase is bandied about in recent times. And how can you make sure that your SOPs are very unique and they stand out and catch the attention of whoever the reviewer is by being concise, in being very, very direct, and also being very forceful. And these are qualities that you cannot gain by understanding your subject. Understanding your subject is something else. Expressing your understanding of the subject is something else. So as far as the expression is concerned, as far as the communication part of it is concerned, reading literature, reading elevating literature is essential. And if you happen to make a habit of reading books, then you will not have any need to attend any workshops on soft skills training. I understand that AICTE and all other bodies of technical education in India make it a point to train their students in terms of, you know, office skills or making them professionally capable. And those skills involve how to, draft your CVs, how to write your statements of purposes, and how to behave in a formal environment, how to behave in an office, and some such things. So, most of these aspects will be your second nature if you happen to make reading a usual habit. And if you happen to enjoy reading, then you will not find the necessity of soft skills. I'm not entirely jettisoning away the importance of soft skills training. I'm only trying to say that the process itself will be eased if you read literature. And reading literature and developing a power of expression is also very much important in order to popularize your own craft. If you happen to be a mechanical engineer, if you happen to be an aeronautics engineer or a computer science engineer, irrespective of that, you will be asked to talk to people. You will be expected to, talk to people who will give you grants and communicate your ideas to people from varied backgrounds. There won't be scientists, there will not be technologists in every gathering that you will address. So how do you communicate very, very technical ideas to people who do not have the privilege of coming from such a background? It is by, by your power of eloquence. If you have those nuts and bolts that mark out the power of eloquence, then you will be in a very, very comfortable position. You will be in a position of command to communicate your ideas at will. And at this juncture, I must also say that if you love your subject very, very deeply, regardless of what the subject is, then you will have this natural urge, you will have this natural desire within you to talk to other people about the subject you love. Because nobody, will say that I like this and I do not like talking about it. That usually does not happen. What usually happens is if a person is, passionate about something else, passionate about one thing or another, he will also be equally passionate about talking about those things. And the talking part of it is captured by the power of expression. And just have a look at the some of the names that I have listed at the last line of this slide. Richard Feynman, who was a great physicist, and Professor Carl Sagan, again, a great person who worked for the popularizing of science, and Professor Jacob Bronowski, the far famed telecaster of the series The Ascent of Man, who also went a long way to make science more interesting, more accessible to people from all over. And, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who took over from Carl Sagan and who is currently being projected as, the rock star of science. And also Professor Walter Lewin, who taught at the, Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the USA. I would like all of you, if you haven't already watched some of Professor Walter Lewin's demonstrations, they are an absolute delight, and I think all of you will benefit from watching those demonstrations. And he has written a book, and it was a lecture for the love of physics, wherein he demonstrates there is, a great, a ball, an imposing ball of a great weight hovering around a big, huge hall, at the end of which is Professor Walter Lewin. And he says, in order to talk about the conservation of energy, he says, when the pendulum goes about, when the ball at the end of the pendulum goes about, and he leaves the ball, he leaves that huge, cannon-like thing, I must say, cannonball-like ball. It is so big. He leaves it at from the level of his nose. And when that goes a full swing and comes back, because it has spent a certain amount of energy and has to come to rest after a point, it will stop at a level, which is lesser than his nose. And before releasing the ball, standing at the end of the hall, Professor Walter Lewin says, I have absolute trust in the findings of physics. And if physics is right, if whatever I have taught you is indeed correct, then this will not be my last lecture. You will see me again, because that ball, if it happens to come back again and crash into the nose of Professor Walter Lewin, who is an old man, a poor old man, then he will not survive the impact. So these are some of the great communicators of science. And in order to popularize your craft, you have to look into how all of these people have spoken so passionately, have spoken so eloquently about various aspects of science and technology. For example, even Elon Musk gives talks. Elon Musk, as all of you know, is the founder of Tesla, is the founder of SpaceX, which are great organizations in the modern sense. And you can read their biographies, you can read their autobiographies. For example, Richard Feynman himself has written great books about the pleasure of finding things out. And surely you're joking, Mr. Feynman, which happens to be, in a way, an autobiography. And I need not say anything at all about Professor Carl Sagan's far famed books, such as The Pale Blue Dot, such as Cosmos, which have really inaugurated a wide ranging set of interests in people, and which have made people take to science, which have made people pursue science and technology like anything else. So you can derive inspiration from these people, and you can really take a lesson or two in order to how to popularize your craft. And going forward, I think, like I said before, it is also essential to read beyond your textbooks. What usually happens is students get stuck with whatever textbooks or whatever material that is prescribed immediately in their syllabus. Of course, I understand wading your way through those textbook itself is notoriously difficult, and you will not have any time or even the interest to pursue anything else, to read anything beyond that. But if you happen to read some of the textbooks or even some of the books about the same things that you're reading, for example, if you are an aeronautical engineer, I would urge you to read The Theory of Flight, which is a definitive and landmark text, so that you will have a greater perspective to approach your subject. And that, I think, is absolutely essential. You can explore these books yourself. Use the power of technology that you have at your disposal, that technologists have themselves provided to you. Use all the resources available on the internet. There is a website called archive.com. There is a website called Library Genesis, which hosts legions and legions of books freely available. So make use of those literature, makes use of those resources, and read as widely and read as indiscriminately as possible in order to derive all the benefits that I previously enlisted. And what does this what does this necessitate? What does this bring about? Reflective reading can trigger ideas and also settle doubts. For example, if you happen to get some doubts while listening to a lecture, or by hearing a demonstration, or even while listening to an audiobook, if you close that book and if you pause that file and go back to that book, and you will see that the doubts will have resolved themselves. Why? Mostly because that reflective reading uh, has that effect. And I think reading physical books or even reading ebooks can have this salutary effect on all these readers. Why? Because books offer you that opportunity to close them whenever you think, to to muse about the problems that you have encountered in the process of reading those books, and come back to that portion later. Whereas that is not quite the case with doing something else. So reflective reading helps you a lot. It can also trigger ideas. So if you are reading a book related to a topic of your interest, then the idea that would have germinated in your mind will take a direction that you would have not thought about at all previously, thanks to reading a book. So reading can also trigger ideas. And if you read through the history of science, for example, I would again urge you to read about the great scientist, about the great inventor. He was also a technologist in a way, not a technologist, but at least a person who used the findings of science in order to materialize them into products. The great Michael Faraday. He has written great books such as The Chemical History of a Candle. And if you read those books, I'm sure that they will trigger some ideas within you. And technical education, especially in today's sense, might make one's perspective very, very narrow. I'm not demeaning technical education because I happen to be one trained in those methods myself. So I have all respect for technical education. But because, like I said previously, technology and by virtue of that engineering itself, it thrives on specialization. What does specialization really mean? It means that you pour and you invest all your interests in a very, very narrow domain, so much so that you are absolutely isolated from everywhere else. um, there is a saying, almost as a joke, that a person who happens to treat the left portion of the human heart will have absolutely no idea about how to treat the right portion of the human heart or even the human brain. So that is how it has the processes of science, the way in which science and technology has progressed. It has become more and more specialized, and in order to develop a greater worldview, in order to develop uh, a fundamental view of things and get an insight into the more enduring parts of human nature, you have to read literature. And in order to not be narrow, and in order to not find yourself in this suffocating straitjacket of specialization, I would urge you to have a look at classical Indian literature, especially classical Indian poets. You might have heard names such as Kalidasa, or Vyasa and Valmiki, and a host of other poets. Even during our own times, people like Dr. Shatavadhani R. Ganesh and people like them are polymaths. They have a great amount of knowledge, incisive knowledge, insightful knowledge about a whole host of things, as against this narrow approach that technology, might foster in people. So I think that is one more reason in order to pursue science. And I think I will conclude my talk by referring to a quote by Professor C.P. Snow. I think most of you will have heard of Professor C.P. Snow. He was both a man of literature and also a person of science. He used to teach at the University of Cambridge when great people used to teach there, such as G.H. Hardy, and if I'm not mistaken, even Bertrand Russell. So C.P. Snow wrote this very, very famous book. In fact, he delivered a lecture at the University of Cambridge, which was titled The Two Cultures and the Scientific Revolution. The two cultures has almost become a catchphrase in the modern times in order to signify the unbridgeable gap between people of science and people of literature. So I would like to read out two quotes that C.P. Snow writes in his book, The Two Cultures. C.P. Snow says, or he tries to impress upon all of us, why scientists and people of literature have to come together in order to take stock of the mutual happenings in their respective fields. Professor Snow writes that when he happened to talk to some of his scientific colleagues, that if they have any inclination towards literature at all, or at least when he asked them about the books, the kind of books they have read, this is what he writes in his book. When one tried to probe for what books they had read, they would modestly confess, "Well, I've tried a bit of Dickens," rather as though Dickens were an extraordinarily esoteric, tangled, and dubiously rewarding writer. Dickens had been transformed into the type specimen of literary incomprehensibility. This is what C.P. Snow writes. And, there is another saying that the most great writers, the greatest of writers, are those people whose names are absolutely popular, but the contents of their books, the contents of their works are absolutely not popular. They mean to say that people would have heard of Shakespeare, or people would have heard of Byron or Dante. When one asks that what have they written about, what are their works, what are the unique features of their work, then we go into all sorts of generalizations in order to answer that question very squarely. That is what CP now means. And they say we would have tried a bit of Dickens, and they would have felt very, very hard pressed to continue forward, and they would have closed the book. And this is the quote that C.P. Snow refers to: scientists who have read some books, or the scientists' approach towards literature. Next, he comes back to the approach that the people of literatures or literateurs that have about science, that they have about widely popular scientific ideas. Mind you, C.P. Snow did not ask them about nuclear physics or some such high-flown things. Let me read the quote itself. If I had asked them even a simpler question, I have chosen a random quotation from the book. He goes on to say that he had asked them a series of questions and concludes with this with these lines. If I had asked them even a simpler question, such as what do you mean by mass or acceleration? And this sentence is very, very important, which is the scientific equivalent of saying, can you read? So asking a person if he understands mass or if he understands acceleration is the scientific equivalent of asking, can you read, according to C.P. Snow. And when asked so, not more than 1 in 10 of the highly educated would have felt that I was speaking the same language. So this is how C.P. Snow laments that people of literature are absolutely oblivious to the great findings of science and technology. I hope that find that opportunity to bridge this to bridge this yawning gap between science and literature, and we can, take both those streams forward in order to make the whole place, this beautiful earth that we inhabit, a better place for posterity and also for ourselves. Thank you very much.
Uh,
So I have a question.
Thank you so much, Shashikant Kiranji. But there are children who've raised their hands and probably they like to talk to you for a while. So
Surely,
we
surely.
can, though our session ends at 3, but then
Right.
we can take another 5 minutes to take up a few queries. Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you so much. Anand Raj, would you like to know something?
Yes, ma'am.
Please go
Uh,
ahead.
First of all, good afternoon, sir. My name is Anand Raj from Shivali College of Engineering. Sir, many people says that reading a fiction is just a waste of time. Some says, sir, that it is unnecessary to read stories which are just imagination and it has no practical value. So, sir, my question is it really so, or what's your point of view on it? And again, sir, can you please tell a few benefits of reading fiction? That's all,
Yes.
sir.
Yes, absolutely. I think I have answered this question during the process of the talk itself, but then to answer it very succinctly, that one does not read literature in order to achieve anything. One reads literature or one reads works of creative literature such as fiction or novels in order to understand the human psyche better, in order to understand the way that people have behaved and why people behave the same things. So if one can ask the same question about technology itself, why technology is important. One would get an answer that it eases the way you live every day. Without a mobile phone, you cannot talk to people, or without having the Zoom, I cannot be talking to you. Well, all that is very well. But what was the kind of mindset that influenced people in order to come up with an app like Zoom? And why did that come up in these times of pandemics, where people were stranded into islands and talking to people from all corners of the globe became important in order to understand the dynamics of those questions and the attitudes and aspirations of the people who found out these apps were beneficial. That is why it is essential to read fiction. Thank you.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So
Uh,
I have a
y-
question.
What
yes,
were the
Rishikesh would like to know something. Yes, Rishikesh, go ahead.
So when did you hit the realization that, just the technical education and the prescribed textbooks are too narrow for you, and you decided to widen your spectrum by going into classical literature and, literature of all sorts?
I must say I started reading from somewhere during my high school days, and in college itself, I happened to study in BMS College of Engineering in Bengaluru, and there were some of my lecturers, and I'm sure there are those kinds of lecturers in all colleges everywhere in India who will urge their students to not stick their textbooks. For example, some of my professors in my college asked me to read beyond the textbooks, and they recommended those books themselves. So that made the process very easy for me.
Thank
Sir,
you, sir. Thank you.
sir, what
Uh,
were the sites you were mentioning for reading ebooks? Can you just repeat it?
For reading ebooks, I meant to say books that are available in the form of PDFs, not necessarily ebooks, that are scanned and uploaded on websites such as archive.com, Internet Archive, internetarchive.org, if I'm not mistaken. So that is
Yes,
a
sir.
very
It's
good
it's an
resource.
it's an ORG website.
Yes, right. So that is the
I've
website.
put the link on the chat box.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
that's very nice. So the
Thank you, sir.
students are quite active in this regard. Of course, we have Dr. Nivedita Mukherjee. She is a faculty. Yes, ma'am. Would you like to know something? Uh, I think there's some kind of a technical problem. Then maybe Aftab, Mr. Aftab, Neha Sharma. Uh, okay. Shreya Agarwal, would you like to know something, beta? You have the mic.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, I wanted to know that some people say that you are taking CSC, means computer engineering, but everyone like says that they
Sir,
are having no such placements or and means everyone is like, why are you taking that branch when there is no such similar scope?
Well, I do not think I am competent enough in order to answer that question because, but let me try. Computer science, I think, is quite in vogue even during those times. And in order to take a step back and answer that question, I think you should pursue whatever you feel at the bottom of your heart, that whatever you are passionate about. So, if you are interested in computer science, then I think you have to pursue it no matter whatever other people say. But I think computer science does really have some scope today, at least in its various manifestations.
Okay, sir, thank you.
sir, excuse me, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
please.
yes, Pragati.
Sir, you told reflective reading can trigger ideas and settle doubts. No, sir, I did not understand what you meant by that.
Okay, let me explain. Reflective reading means that whenever you develop a certain skill in reading, whenever you're familiar with the language, what usually happens is you browse through the book very, very quickly, especially if it is a story book. Reflective reading entails that you just read for the sake of turning pages, but you stop at every interval and think about what the ideas are communicated. You think about what the author intended to communicate through that passage in the work. And when you try to do that, many, many ideas open up to you as they would have not opened up previously. Previously, not just in the course of reading the book, but also in a situation where you have not encountered the book itself. So that is about reflective reading. And I think I explained the point about reflective reading dispelling doubts by itself in my talk.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
There's one child, Tanvi Bhatia. She would like to. She requested you. Which was the book on aeronautical engineering?
Theory of Flight. Theory of Flight
Okay.
is a very good book.
So theory of flight. Just take it as a point. And in fact, there's one of our faculty, uh,
Yes, please.
uh, Kiran Manji. Yes, please go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. Hello.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Hi.
Yes, hi, sir. I'm Kiranmi. I'm from Andhra Pradesh. I work in an engineering college. It's like Aditya Engineering College, the name of the college is. So I'm very happy that we had a session as such. But again, I have a big question for you as such. Like, even though the AICT has conducted a session where you people are telling us the importance of literature and all, But the thing is, like, it is not looked up as such in engineering colleges, sir. If you see the syllabus, which AICTE itself designs and promotes and asks colleges and universities to prescribe, it's not at all giving any importance to literature, sir. The major focus is only on language. The students want language, the management wants language. Even AICT's syllabus, the way that they are designing the syllabus, it also emphasizes only the need of language, not at all a bit on literature. It's actually a very big misconception that all these colleges and all are going through. As a literature student, I understand its importance, and I was really very happy when we had a session as such. But why AICT, even though it's conducting a session as such, why it's not actually doing anything to connect both technology and literature as such, what you have said right now? That's my
Uh,
question.
Okay, like in the state of previous question, I'm not in a position to answer because by nature I'm an individual person, quite unconnected with any of the governing bodies such as the AICTE. But I think the focus more on language that AICTE have designed in their courses is because there will be an interplay or interchange of students between all the states of India. And if a person happens to study somewhere in Karnataka or somewhere in Andhra Pradesh who happens to come from Bihar or someplace else in North India, then he will be able to he has to find it comfortable, right? Being here or speaking the same tongue. I think that is why people focus on language more. But literature, like you said, is also important, and I think I've made it absolutely and abundantly clear why it is important and what are the benefits that one can derive. I think AICTE has taken a step in the right direction on feeling the need for such a seminar, and I think this itself goes a long way in establishing its inclination to open itself up to literature. And I hope that the governing authorities will make it a point to involve literature in a more serious manner in engineering syllabus. But then again, the primary focus in an engineering college obviously has to be on engineering, but then how to inculcate those aspects of literature in a manner that will be beneficial to both engineers and not sacrificing the first principles of literature is something that has to be thought about.
Thank you so much, sir. Maybe
Sir,
I'll
I
ask
have a doubt, sir.
Do we have
Varshini,
the
beta,
time?
let
Yes.
it be just a very one-liner because
Uh,
we
yes, ma'am.
yes we have to
Uh,
start the next session on health.
yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Sir, I have chosen mechanical. So do you prefer any books on mechanical?
Mechanical engineering, I think you can read, when it comes to the basics of mechanical engineering in terms of the strength of materials and things like that. Professor L.S. Srinath has written a very great book on the strength of materials and also principles of elasticity and things like that. Professor L.S. Srinath was a professor at IIT Madras, so that book is very nice. And again, the subject is very vast, so there is a good amount of literature available. So I think we have run out of time.
Yes,
And
Thank
very
you,
well.
sir.
I'll
thank you.
just ask Minudi if we can pick something from the YouTube because there are a lot of children connected through YouTube and are viewing this particular participants into this particular uh, series of sessions. So maybe we'll be able to catch on some of them. Otherwise, of course, since it is time for me to hand over the whole, I mean, process of conducting to the next session that is going to be on health from
Ji Didi.
yes. So Vanchanadi, I think I'll thank our resource person Shashikiran BNG for such a beautiful, elaborate, and a very, very interesting talk on